Daniel's story is such a fascinating story about all of his professional journeys and journeys into all sorts of career. I mean, talk about career exploration. He's really kind of done it all. His full bio is in the booklet on page 5. So if you would like to take a look a little bit further about that, go ahead and take a look. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Daniel Siddiqui. He's going to speak to us about working with purpose.
Well, when I got the call from Chris inviting me, I was kind of shocked because the school rejected me as an undergrad. But I'll talk about rejection quite a bit today. So at a time where I felt the world was against me, I had to prove that I was worthy of it all. And that was basically my purpose. This is my journey of discovery. This is the cover of the book. It's supposed to look like me, but a lot of people say Ronald Reagan. But it was all about discovery, not only about this country, what it had to offer, and kind of seeking opportunities I didn't know existed, but also about myself and where I fit into the working world. But also it talks about how I turn rejection into opportunity, because I was full of it. So actually USA Today called me the most rejected person in the world. I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but I thought, okay, at least I'm known for something. So what was the process of being rejected as many times as I have? So out of college, I went to USC, studied economics, and I actually failed 40 consecutive job interviews straight out of college in my field of study, or anything really relevant. Then when I couldn't find a job in that role, I actually thought I'd use and parlay my experience as a collegiate athlete. So I actually reached out to 18,000 collegiate coaches in every single sport, actually even willing to do volunteer. So I actually got rejected by 18,000 schools or by coaches. So then on my journey of discovery, which I'm going to be mainly talking about, I made 5,000 phone calls to just land 50 jobs. So 4,950 rejections there. How was I able to deal with all this, what you're wondering? Thanks to all those date rejections, I was kind of numb to this. But actually, I'll make a quick story. On the journey on state number 4, if I remember, it was in North Dakota. I did really like this girl that I was working side by side with. And then I thought, am I settling too soon, or am I going to find somebody better down the road? I ended up finding somebody better on the 45th job, and now I'm getting married to her in 3 months. So the job search. If you fail one job, it's normal. 2, even so. But I was on my 10th, and I started getting a little bit disappointed and starting questioning myself, the process, and started losing a lot of my self-esteem. I got to the point where I hit rock bottom. As low as a sober person can go, I felt. That's where I went to the point of humility, where I was willing to do anything and everything to earn a position. And that's kind of what I was taking with me as I was doing the 50 jobs. So when I had the idea and the idea developed, I started gaining hope and optimism. And then when I landed 1 or 2 positions, I'll go through the details on how I found some of these jobs. I started building a lot of confidence, and then it came to the point where I was on my 30th job, and I was like, I can do anything, I can land any job anywhere, and that's kind of what I've taken. But what's interesting is that I was getting a lot of job offers on the road, some that weren't really relating to my mission, and that's why I hold true to myself, never to be complacent or satisfied. I felt like I put in all this groundwork. I'm not going to just settle for a job unless it's rewarding or fulfilling and something worth doing. So here's just an example. In Connecticut, they're known for insurance capital of the world. So I wanted to be an insurance agent. When I was making my cold calls, they actually said, don't call back. I was on my 3rd call, and they said, we're going to get a restraining order on your ass if you call one more time. Now, what's interesting is that I had nothing to lose, right? And I'm a risk taker, and I landed a job, actually. There I am, sitting at their desk, of all things, as an agent. Now, my journey actually, some of these employers had to take risks themselves. So this gentleman in the green shirt, he was actually inspired by my journey. This was my 45th or 42nd job. This guy in the green shirt, he actually quit his job, even though he's one of the partners, and he's been there for 15 plus years. He said, wow, Daniel took a risk. He's actually doing something he loves, or at least in the process of discovering it. So he quit his job, and now he's started a flavored kale company, of all things, selling that online. And that's his passion. So just another example, Border Patrol in Arizona and Nogales, when I was making my calls, they said it's impossible. And by this point in my life, 3 years out of school and no job offers full-time, impossible was an inspiring word to me because I wanted to prove that I was capable of anything. So I resourcefully and creatively found a position working as a Border Patrol agent as my 14th position. So I even got a chance to confiscate marijuana. You see 40 pounds there. So that's how they carry it across the border. And walking out, huh? Yeah, I told you, as low as a sober person can go, so I don't touch with that stuff. But now this is interesting. I want to be a model in North Carolina because, you know, Hanes and Wrangler are based there, and Furniture Capital World, you need models for the shoots. A lot of the agencies laughed at me. Actually, the anchor that interviewed me in Chicago said, well, I could believe you could become a cheesemaker or work on the train, but a model? Come on. So I was a little bit offended by that, so I had to prove him wrong, and there I am working as a model. This actually made the cover of Italian magazine, if anything. So now this is a little ridiculous. Park entertainer, I was an Egyptian stilt walker at Universal Studios. Now, this is a significant picture, at least to me. I was there standing pretty much in disbelief. How was I able to pull this off? To have a big company like Universal hiring me and buying into my idea. A year before, exactly 1 year before this was the time I was at the lowest. I was 3 years unemployed, nearly homeless, had no support from parents. They did not like any of the direction I was taking. Because it was very unconventional, and they just didn't really understand how hard, this is during the recession, how hard it was to find work and how competitive California was at the time as well. So I was, at this point, said, man, I flipped the script, and now I was able to get any job, even a weatherman in Cleveland, Ohio, for NBC. And now, granted, this was 4:30 in the morning. No one watches that time anyways. But like I said, I'll do anything for fulfilling the mission. So how did I get this all started? Well, one night, out of frustration and curiosity, I wrote down my ideas on paper, and I made it in a resume form, and I put down all 50 jobs that I wanted, and I made it as realistic as possible, even some of the duties, the dates that I wanted to be there, and make a checklist and make sure I was able to fulfill everything that I've written down. And you're probably wondering what jobs that I aim for. So I thought the best theme would be choosing jobs that reflect the culture and economy of every state. So that was the theme. So I worked with the Mormons in Utah. I was a rodeo announcer in South Dakota, corn farmer in Nebraska, park ranger at Devil's Tower in Wyoming, a logger in Oregon, Border Patrol, as I mentioned, meat packer in Kansas, cheesemaker in Wisconsin, auto mechanic in Detroit, coal miner in West Virginia, and even a high school football coach in Alabama, which is actually the only job I had experience before landing the role. So living the map is what I called my journey, because even as a young kid, being born and raised in Los Altos, can't get any more of a bubble than that. I felt like I really was curious about how different I would be if I grew up in another state or moved and lived life there. So I called my journey Living the Map, just to kind of see and get a feel of what I was staring at and envisioning of how people live and work. So I began in California, and I actually did not have a dime to my name, literally not a dime to my name when I had this idea. So I actually reached out to sponsors and didn't even own a vehicle at the time as well. So I thought, let's go try Jeep or Ford. I went dealership to dealership on El Camino Real and Stevens Creek. Every single one of them, they all liked the idea, but not enough to give me any money or sponsor me a car. So then I tried energy drink companies, because they try to market themselves in any way they could. They liked the idea, not enough to give me anything as well. And then GPS, I reached out to them. They said they didn't care if I got lost, so it was at that point. So I actually never used credit at this point in my life. So I had a line of credit of $5,000, and then I went on Craigslist, bought a Jeep Cherokee, and I hit the road. And I said, let whatever happen, happen. And that's all about being adaptable, which is the first element I talk about today out of the 5. Adaptability is absolutely key. Life throws you curveballs. How are you going to deal with it? I had no idea it was going to be this difficult to find work. I had to come up with resourceful, creative solutions on not just being a rodeo announcer, but every single position was a different way. There was no one way about getting these jobs. Very strategic. So not only landing the jobs, but also working the jobs alongside of, for instance, cowboys. I've never been exposed to the cowboy culture, never been to a rodeo before. How many of you guys been to a rodeo before? Oh, quite a bit. Well, if I ask that question in South Dakota, most people say, yeah, I compete in it, so it's different. But I felt like an outsider going into this state, not only because my car is very small compared to trucks and trailers, but I just had my outfit was just running shoes, my shorts, and the T-shirt, and everyone had a cowboy hat. Every male did at least. And this gentleman on the right, he wanted me to, fit the role as a rodeo announcer. So he gave me his wardrobe. I got the belt buckle, the boots, and the Wranglers. And he actually even asked me, where are you staying while you're in South Dakota? And I was hoping I wasn't going to have to sleep in my car again, because that was rough. But then again, I was thinking, well, hopefully not with him, because he's very scary looking. But at this point, I was like, okay, I got to be open-minded. I got to be trustworthy. And I followed him home, and he led me to, even though I was envisioning he's going to lead me to a rusted trailer, and I was going to sleep on a dirty carpet and a dog drooling on my face, just envisioning bad things. But he actually lived in a beautiful ranch. I met his great family. They fed me to a steak dinner, which you can expect in South Dakota, steak all the time, even for breakfast. And that's when I started trusting people, and I found a host family in every single state. And this was my Mississippi family, Michigan, and they were Lebanese, Southern Georgia, Amish in Pennsylvania, Hawaiians in Maui, where I was a surfing instructor, and even a cheesehead in Wisconsin. So the next element, which we've been talking quite a bit about today, is networking. And just the more people you meet, more opportunities you create for yourself. And how did I go about doing that? How many of you guys been on a subway train in New York City before? Yeah. Is it awkward to make eye contact with a stranger there? Quite a bit, right? So I was very intimidated going into the state, but I did whatever it took to land positions. And I really came out of my shell during this journey and went up to strangers, basically marketing myself. Marketing is essentially networking, always presenting your best self. So I went up to the stranger and said, and I told him about my project, and he asked me, what do you want to do in Massachusetts? That's where he's from. And I said, I want to play baseball for the Boston Red Sox, because I have very lofty goals, but I do whatever it takes to fulfill them, or at least get close to it. But he actually said, I know Bill Murray, the comedian. He owns a baseball team in the suburbs of Boston. So I actually was a baseball scout for Bill Murray, and I got to sit next to him during a game. He's very weird, more than you see in the movies, but. Different things that we've been talking about marketing is social media is huge, LinkedIn as well. I even created my own website to refer employers to. Google search is how I found most of my jobs, just researching, using it as a research tool, wondering what states are known for. For instance, meatpacking in Kansas, I looked up every single company in the state of Kansas. I was willing to go anywhere within the state. And that's why I failed or got rejected nearly 5,000 times during this process. So this was actually an interesting part of my journey. My journey wasn't really to find my job, find a job. It was to go on this adventure to explore. But I was actually landing full-time work at the end of each week. This was a going away party on a Friday. I was working in a medical equipment, a manufacturing company in Minnesota, and you can see they were depressed I was leaving, right? So, but yeah, they surprised me with a going away party, and I was never even asking for paychecks, even though I got a paycheck from every single company except 5. They were the governmental jobs. But they surprised me with this party, and they actually handed me a $1,500 check for my services. And then they had another check, which was $500 with all the employers dug out from their pockets. And it just shows how kind and generous people are across America. Because if you see someone in need, there's a lot of people willing to help. So they were one of those groups. So that really actually made me want to continue this journey, and knowing that I was just doing this not just for myself, but for a greater cause. Because my mission, of course, and my purpose evolved over time. It wasn't just about me, but it was about the other people struggling in my position, all these other job seekers during the recession of 2008 and 2009. So now in Montana, I was working in a very small town. You can see how small it is. The entering and leaving is the same sign. This is Nye, Montana. Can anyone guess how many people was in this town? Under five. So I knew everybody within the hour I was there. But I worked at a general store, and they not only wanted to give me a chance to work at their company, but also they wanted to share their lifestyle. So I got a chance to go hunting and fishing for the first time. It's not a big hobby in California. Anyone ever been hunting before? Yeah, not too many of you. I didn't know that you needed a license. I thought you can just carry a gun and start shooting things, you know. Then I got to try different foods across the country. Anyone want to take a guess on what this is? I'll give you a hint. It's in Idaho, which is known. Baked potato. It's actually ice cream potato. Vanilla ice cream powder with the brown sugar, and then the whipped cream emulating sour cream. So I'll show you different foods that I tried across America as well. Logging was one of the most toughest jobs, as you can expect, and you see on TV, the X-Men. But I carried a 60-pound chainsaw all day, 3 feet long. Dangerous not because only I didn't have eye protection, but, you know, trees, you know, fall. I've heard horror stories, and I'm going to talk about the risks that I've put myself into. Anyone want to take any guesses what Las Vegas is known for and what kind of position I found there? Don't say stripper because that's not appropriate, but. All right, I'll play a quick video on what I did there. Russ and Molly. We were gathered here today on December 5th, 2008 for, I got my license on the internet, and actually they liked me so much that they even had me be a florist, so I made the flower arrangements there as well. Take you, Molly, to be my... To be honest, that was one of the jobs I wasn't good at. I was actually more nervous than the people getting married. But there was different types of ceremonies. There's a walk-up and there's a drive-through at this chapel. That wasn't my first. I didn't get every job that I wanted. I initially wanted to work on the Strip at a hotel, but then found an alternative, and that's about being adaptable, having a backup plan, Plan B. Now my most uncomfortable job, and I was wondering, kind of questioning my purpose again. The night before I started at the meatpacking plant, I was sleeping in my car because I didn't know anyone within the state yet. So it was -6 degrees. And I was like putting myself through torture. I didn't have gas money, didn't have food. So I was wondering, this must be a greater purpose than myself. And that's what I carried on through the tough times. This was probably my most uncomfortable job, as it would be for most people working in a slaughterhouse. So these are also different things that I've learned. And this is what I'm doing, and parlayed my experience into a curriculum where the classroom would be tied into the real world. I've learned a lot from exposing myself and making these discoveries. Like in archaeology, I was never really engaged in studying history in high school and even junior high through college until I actually went into the fields and found Civil War bolts, horseshoes from back in the 1700s. Is that when Civil War was? 17? No, that was 1800s, right? Yeah. So, Okay, so anyways, I was working in different environments, Indian Bluff Shelter you see there in Arkansas. I got a chance to work at a coal-fired power plant in Missouri as a boiler maker, working in the oil fields of Oklahoma. And these are all things that I'm not used to seeing in the West Coast. I was a petroleum engineer in Texas for Chevron. And these are all the active oil wells you see in the Gulf of Mexico here, as you can see that. Now, since we're in California, I thought I'd bring up Texas because there's usually a rivalry between the states. And I thought, wow, why does this state have so much pride in themselves? They have the state flag waving everywhere, right? So you can see even they call a sandwich shop called Texadelphia. I'm like, okay, you're really full of yourself. And even order a T-bone steak, and the waiter said, you mean Texas T-bone steak? Yeah, Texas T-bone steak, all right? So this is different types of foods. Once again, this was my meal in Mississippi. You guys probably, being from California, don't recognize this food. You can't even smuggle this into in California if you want to, but everything you can see is brown from being deep fried. Even the water is brown. No, that's sweet tea, which is like water in the South. Even the high school football team that I was coaching, the Gatorade container on the sidelines was filled with sweet tea, if you can believe that. So yeah, you see hush puppies, fried catfish, and I try to balance out the meal with vegetables, and it was just drowning in cheddar cheese there. Now, I actually took up the job as being a dietitian in Mississippi, our most obese state, and worked on the food line one day in a hospital, and then worked alongside a registered dietitian for the remainder of the week. And this actually was my favorite job. I loved it. And I would never have made that discovery unless I went on this journey. I remember going through a small town, being, from a different environment here in the Bay Area. People like to exercise, but I was in a small town in Mississippi exercising. Everyone on their porch was staring at me, wondering maybe I got a DUI or something, where's this guy going? But knowing that this position, I can make a difference and it would be rewarding. And this is something that I've pursued. I'll talk about towards the end what I'm doing now. Now, Louisiana, I was a bartender on Bourbon Street during Mardi Gras. I never drank in my life, so I had no idea what I was doing or what people were asking for. Someone asked me for a Jack and Coke, and I was like, who's Jack? It came to that point. But they even tricked me to pour more alcohol than I was supposed to. That's why I had lines forming, So, but as you can imagine, this was an endurance challenge. It sucked that most of these jobs started before 5 a.m. Most of them do. Most of the blue-collar jobs do start very early. And the bartending was my only evening position. But this was an endurance challenge. Not only the jobs, but setting up the jobs. I was sleeping 3 hours a night, and that shows what having a purpose can do. It's very powerful. I was also driving from state to state, 800 to 1,000 miles on average from state to state. And what really kept me going is not knowing that I was making a difference in my life, but also knowing that I was making a difference in other personal journeys, because I was getting a lot of contacts and people were wondering, how am I doing this? They were just asking for advice and knowing that I was giving them encouragement. So this was the halfway point, my 25th job. And this was actually a point where I thought it's going to get easier, but it did not get easier ever. Actually, I got held up at gunpoint in Detroit, which you can expect in the most dangerous city in America. It was at the auto shop, and the guy demanded for money. I was with the employers who were not intimidated for some reason. They actually brought out their own shotgun and said, how about you give us money? So I was like, all right, part of the culture there. Now, I stayed with a Lebanese family, and they had a big ball of raw meat on my plate, and being adaptable as I am, I tried it. And I actually got the stomach virus. Went to the emergency room, was vomiting for 4+ hours. So, and can you imagine how awkward it is to just meet these people and now you're being sick in their home? But yeah, it was just a lot of ups and downs that I went through. But people really accepted me, not only the employers, but the host families, like one of their own. They treated me like their family member. They even gave up their own bedroom for me. It was just incredible how kind people are across the country. Now, moving on, in Indiana, some of these employers, as I mentioned, were seeking me out. So I got a chance to work on a pit crew for the winning Indy 500 team. And now my first day, and this is showing what you can do by just learning by doing and just not fearing to fail. It took me about 12 seconds, which is very slow on my first round. The tire went one way, the lug went the other way. I was embarrassed. You know, being an athlete too, I was like, oh man, I'm really embarrassed here. And the CBS News camera was on me too. But then it took about, you know, just not fearing and being persistent. And by the end of the week, they gave me a full-time job offer. I changed it in 5 seconds consistently. And so a lot of people ask, how do you get these jobs? Or how you keep getting these job offers, and it's all about positive attitude, willingness to learn and be trained, and being engaged into work. Now, this might shock you, but I'll just have you guess what I did in Kentucky first. What did I do in Kentucky? What are they known for? Horses, all right. Now, I'll show you what I did exactly with the horses here.
She won't bother.
Yes, sir.
Going about that far, you should feel 2 feet in the nose.
Reach on in there. You're okay. You're not going to hurt anything.
No, believe me, that fold's coming out of there. You're not going to do any
Come on.
Oh my God.
You're okay. You're good.
This is the most uncomfortable thing I heard done in my life. I gotta say.
That's right.
Doesn't get better than this in Kentucky at all.
You're doing a wonderful job, Daniel.
Huh?
You're doing great.
Oh, you scared me. Oh man.
My hand slipped.
Uh-oh.
We're good.
You can zoom the camera. That'd be awesome. You zoomed the baby coming.
You feel the shoulder slip?
Yeah.
Now we're good. Once,
Here we go.
Once
We
they
got
do
you.
that,
We're getting you right there.
grab the head.
Grab the
Yeah,
head.
just pick the head.
Pick it. Just hold it up off the ground.
Yeah, just pick it up. There you go. Good.
Come on, Bobby.
There you go. There you
Here,
go.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Anyone want to do that for a career? Now, that horse was auctioned. This is how big of an industry is in Kentucky. That horse was auctioned off for $500,000 just by being born. Now, that was actually a flawless operation, what you see there. Some of them were nearly tragic. That's why you have people assisting. My employer called me at 2:30 in the morning. He said, with his thick Kentucky accent, "You want to come follow mayor?" You know, like that. And I was like thinking, why do I want to trick a politician? Because I thought he said fool a mayor. You know, I was like... Now, you don't see this on the West Coast that much. This is kind of signage that I haven't seen before. You know, Asylum Springs, where Jesus is Lord, or anti-abortion signs. Even a statue of Jesus in a public space is very rare to see in the West Coast. This was my high school football team. You can see most of them have the same type of hairdo, the frat swoop, they call it. Now, it's interesting, in the South, the accents were so thick I couldn't, when I was making the cold calls, I couldn't tell if they were hiring me or not sometimes. But this is just another photo of doing the stilt walking. Now, they actually asked if I wanted to go shirtless, and then I saw them, and I said, no, just give me a shirt, because I'm very white and skinny compared to these buff and tan guys here. But this is actually an important role how I found this position. Now, I created competitive tension at this point. Some people nickname me a walking billboard. I called Universal Studios and I said I got job offers from SeaWorld and Disney World. I lied though. I don't know if that's really good advice, but but it worked for me. And I wanted to take advantage of that. So I had a bidding war between all these amusement parks in Orlando. And I ended up being a stilt walker, which is actually a role that I wanted anyways. It was really like, when am I ever going to get a chance from an econ degree to be an Egyptian stilt walker? This is actually a real career for many people, being a park entertainer. This gentleman on the right here has been there 16 years. And some of their other jobs are being like a stunt man as well. So you see wild alligators in Florida and South Carolina. This is just showing the different environments or accommodations that I found. I stayed on a golf resort in South Carolina as a golf caddy. They put me up for one of those rooms there, which was $1,000 a night. And then sometimes I found trailers to stay, like in Wyoming, in the middle of the woods. It was kind of a scary environment to be in the middle of the woods in Wyoming by yourself. Vermont, I made syrup with this family in a log cabin. I stayed on a ranch in Montana, and then Adobe-style homes you see in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's just showing you some of the different lifestyles that I was exposed to. Now, moving up through the East Coast, I was making all these discoveries, and that's where the risk really comes into play. Risk-taking is all about what are you willing to discover. And I would not be in this position on my 34th job and have all that prior experience unless I was willing to take the risk, whether it was financial risks, the investment to leave my my field of study and try all these other jobs, the emotional risk of suffering through rejections, and what if I failed on this journey? I wouldn't have known what to do. And also just the physical risk, as you can experience in coal mining. Very risky job. I was working 4 miles underground, and it took about an hour and 15 minutes to go each way. And I'll just show you real quick what it was like to descend inside of a coal mine on a battery-operated cart.
Mantis, lights off. Let me show you something.
That's it.
Yeah.
Can't see a thing.
Only thing you can see is that little camera light on right there.
So,
Now, right now we're about a quarter mile deep. And we're gonna go a lot deeper than that. Okay. All right, John. This is a well-maintained, real good little mine right here.
So it was very intimidating to go down there, as you can imagine. But why was I willing to put myself in that position? I felt like, why can't I do it for a week when people are doing it through generations? That gave me the courage to keep going. Also, sometimes on these roads in anyone ever been to Appalachia and seen these type of roads, sometimes I felt more safe inside the coal mine than on the roads. And then as you go East Coast, the drivers get very aggressive. That's considered a risk as well. Anyone ever driven in Boston? I think their nickname is Massholes or something like that. But moving on, this was one of my most interesting positions working with the Amish. I was building furniture, and that was a very difficult job to land as well because I had no way of contacting them, but resourcefully finding ways of getting there. I tried to fit the role everywhere I went, so I grew a beard to line my jaw. I made the mistake, I didn't know that was only for married men. This was just kind of their lighting source. They would have a propane tank and roll it around wherever needed in their household. That was one of the most eye-opening, and sometimes you can't base on stereotypes because people think they're a very closed society. I've never seen people more open in my life than them. They took me into their household. They treated me like, as I mentioned, one of their own. Now, towards the end, my fifth element is perseverance. And I think this is the umbrella message. And this is kind of what I've been talking about in the panel of experts, is just dealing with rejection and learning how to deal with rejection. And as you're pursuing something, there's signs that you're pursuing the right thing. And there's always an avenue to get to where you need to go. I always make a judgment as I'm pursuing something. So when I failed 40 job interviews in economics, that was a sign to move on and find another avenue for success. Now, I've never seen anything more apparent than being a lobsterman. Sometimes you can't control the outcome as much as you want to. You can't control every outcome, as I thought at this point, because this is my 47th job. But I could not fulfill the duties as a lobsterman at all. Anyone ever been seasick before? Yeah, there's nothing you can really do about it. And I was out there for 20 minutes, and I got seasick, within 20 minutes. And they don't turn the boat around for you because it's a business. So we were out there 10 hours. So I was suffering for that long. And then the next day, the same thing happened. And then Wednesday, the employer was surprised I showed up. And he said, well, I know you're a persistent person, but you're not really helping us out on the boat. So he politely fired me, actually. But always a backup plan I had, and asked if I could build lobster traps instead on the mainland. So that's what I did for the remainder of the week. Now, it was very hard to avoid lobsters in Maine. Even they have street signs named after a lobster, or even a guy in a costume calling you into his lobster restaurant. You know, it's kind of like syrup in Vermont, very hard to avoid. Alaska, I got a chance to be an outdoor photographer for National Geographic. And in Hawaii, I was a surfing instructor. And like all these other jobs, I had no experience doing it. But learning on the job was essential. And also sharing my skills as I was going, I was building a lot of skills, and that way I could market myself better to these employers. So for a surfing instructor job, I used all my coaching background. I said, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. So what's next is, as I mentioned briefly, was a college curriculum. Actually, I did not mention that, but I parlayed my experience into a college curriculum where students or young adults get exposure to the real world, just like I had. Because if I went on this journey before I went into college, I would have been more focused. I would have known what I would have studied, which I already mentioned. I would have gone into nutrition and used my passion for sports as well into that position. So. Yep, still can. So I'll just talk what I'm doing currently. I'm actually on a new journey of discovery. Drop me in. I'm going into the most struggling and secluded regions in America to realize how different epidemics or social issues develop. And so I'm going and landing jobs there and living amongst the people as well. So working on an Indian reservation in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, where unemployment's up to 80%. So I did career development for the youth, kind of instilling hope there, which was a nearly impossible job to land. They don't hire anyone that's not native. And then I got a chance to understand poor working conditions, working with migrant field workers outside of Bakersfield, where it was about 116-degree weather. So I got to see the sacrifices that they make. And I get whole new perspectives as I'm doing all these jobs. This is what really inspires me and ticks me as I go. And then I got a chance to work in social services in eastern Kentucky, one of the most impoverished states or regions in America. And then something I'm most proud about, I actually went to Mississippi in November and I trained the most obese community in America for a 5K road race, and I hosted the race as well. And it was a very hard start. Only 12 people showed up. By the end of the month, I had 102 people competing, and this is my lunchtime activity. This was the first time they've ever stretched their calves in their life. So this was extremely rewarding work, and that's what my topic is about, doing things with purpose, working with purpose. So thank you guys all, appreciate it.
Some of those jobs were so unbelievable. Thank you for bringing your story to us here at UC Berkeley. And a small token of our appreciation, I have this Ansel Adams book of photography for UC Berkeley.
Thank you so much. It's going to compete with my book, huh?
Yeah, compete with your book. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to remind you to fill out your conference evaluations, and let me now bring up Gabor Basri to close things out for us.
Well, that was truly amazing. Of course, as I see it, your narrative would have been extremely different if you had gotten accepted at UC Berkeley. But, you know, whatever. I must say my job experience is the complete polar opposite of what you've done. I was fortunate growing up knowing what I wanted to do and just sort of doing it. And so I've had a lot less adventures than you. So my hat off to you for being such a adventuresome guy and having so many different experiences. You all don't want to be here anymore. It's Friday afternoon. So my only real job here is to thank some people for bringing this conference together. We had a number of sponsors, including the Division of Equity and Inclusion, but the Vice Provost for Teaching, Learning, Academic Planning Facilities, the Division of Administration and Finance, CoreWe, University Health Services, Parking and Transportation, Student Affairs, who provided us with the venue and some of the dining, and actually the Office of the President. So thanks very much to all of you for coming, and thanks to Daniel for his, I don't know if they were inspiring remarks or intimidating remarks or what, but they were sure entertaining. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the NOW Conference Planning Committee. Any of you who are on that committee, if you could stand and be recognized. This is the first time this happened. It was pulled together pretty quickly, and I hear it was very successful. And again, thank all of you for coming. I hope you found it to be a rewarding experience. Please do fill out the evaluation, say what a great thing it was, and then we'll do it again. Otherwise, TGIF.